Hello, welcome back to MattCast. I'm Matt. This is part of a 4-part series about interacting with the Luna server. In this video, we're going to talk about how you can use PhpMyAdmin to interact with the MySQL database on Luna. Now, since I'm off campus, I first have to set up an SSH tunnel into Luna. If you're on the Mines campus, you don't need to do this. This information is also covered in the first video about SSHing and port tunneling. Open up PuTTY, SSH in, tunnel's already there. So, now that I have that established, I can go to localhost 8080 to connect to the normal web server. But PhpMyAdmin adds a URL that you can go to access PhpMyAdmin. It's entirely a web interface. So in the future, you will have an account for your team. I set up a demo account called MySQL Demo. Later, you'll be able to log in with a username and password. This username and password is not your added account. I suggest you use a different password than your added account if you have a username that is the same as your added username. So this first screen shows us some general basics about the server. What the web server is, what the version of it is, what MySQL extension is being used for PHP, and some various other things. We don't particularly care about any of these things as long as it works. On the left, we have a list of databases. When creating the user MySQL demo, I created a database for it as well, titled the same name as the user. You too will also have a database that is named the same thing as your user. If I click on this database, it will show me all of the tables inside of it. Currently, I only have one test table. From here, you can add new tables. So let's create a new table. Let's call it another table. And we're going to start off with 2 columns. Hit go, and you'll be taken to a form where you can edit the types, name, length, and etc. for your table. In general, you usually want to start off with an ID that has a type of serial. This is an auto-incrementing number where it starts off at 0, and the next one will be 1, there will be another one that's 2. You also want to use this as your primary key. Under index, you want to select primary. This signifies that it is a column that can uniquely identify one of your rows. So for ID, we specifically use the ID column to uniquely identify any single row. Let's also add something else. Let's say a name. Could be a name of a person, the name of an object, what have you. There are various ways to have text. Usually, people use varchars. This is a varying character array. So, the length that you specify is the maximum that column could take up. We'll read about this more in the chapter. But, specify your type and the length. And, we also want to say this is unique. No one can have a duplicate name. There are a few other options that you can specify. Most likely you won't be using any of these inside of your class. But if you wanted to specify them or had some sort of specific characteristic that you wanted that you couldn't do with type, you could set those. So now I have an ID and a name. But let's say I want to add another thing. At the top, you'll notice that where we entered in the table name and then columns, it now says add columns. So if I hit add one column, it adds one column to this. Let's call it age, and it's an integer. And it's not required. We don't require that people put in their age. So you can add as many columns as you want, but you'll notice that it doesn't really give you an option to delete the column. Once we create the table, you'll be able to have this option. Hit save, and you'll now have another table show up inside of your database. When you click on the table, it takes you to where you can see all of the records inside of that table. Under structure, you can change the structure of the table. So for instance, let's say I wanted to get rid of the age column. That's what this drop button does. Note, this is destructive. You can also change the type and other various features. Hopefully, you won't really have to do this. Some other options that you have, this drops, you can multi-select a whole bunch of columns. Once we insert data, we'll notice that the same thing applies there. So, browse will show you all of the records inside of it. We have none. Structure shows you all of the columns and basically what could be described as the DDL for the table. You can also go to SQL, where you can run raw queries. So, let's select everything from another table. Hit go, and it'll show us the result of that SQL. We have no records, so nothing will show up. We can also search for things inside of the table. We're also able to insert things into the table. This interface is a little bit clunky, but here's how it works. We have this top part where you can insert a single row. So, let's leave the ID as empty, let it be it serial and auto increment. Let's use a name of goat, has an age of 40. As soon as I hit go, you'll notice at the top it says that one row is inserted. Then, it proceeds to give you all of the SQL that generated that row. If you wanted, from here, you could go through and try and add another goat that has an age of 10. Now, when you hit this go button, it'll try to run that query, and we'll notice that we get a duplicate entry for goat because we specified that the name is unique. Using this interface, using the insert interface, you can easily add a couple rows, or you can use raw SQL and just insert things like that. They give you some nice prototypes so that you don't have to write all the SQL by hand. You can start off with a simple part and then insert all of the parts that you want. You can duplicate this to add multiple rows. Export and import allow you to generate SQL that will insert the table, the rows, and all of the parts about it. Import is where you can take raw SQL in some sort of compressed file, extract it, and then fill the table based off of that. Most likely you won't really need these features. You can do all of the operations yourself using SQL and insert, and we won't really be using that much data. There are also some other things that you can feel free to take a look at, but most likely you won't need them. So now if we go back to browse, before, this part below showed nothing because we had nothing in it. But now we see in this little table here all of the rows that are inside of the table. And you notice we have this delete. We can copy and we can edit. Using this interface, we can easily manage all of the content inside of our table. Let's say I wanted to delete the table, however. If I click on the database, we'll see all of the tables inside of it. Notice the drop-down button that has the very clear red button. Clicking drop on another table will drop the table entirely. It'll give us a notification that it was completed, and now we have no record that that table ever existed. Be very careful when dropping. I hope this gave you a good overview of how you can use PhpMyAdmin to manage your MySQL database. Thank you for watching.